Hello, students, and welcome. Your exams are very close, so today we are going to do a final, very focused revision of one of our most interesting chapters, control and coordination. Let's make sure that every single key concept is absolutely clear for you.
So here is our plan for today's revision. We'll start with the most basic question: why do living things need control at all? Then we'll dive into the nervous system in animals. And after that, we'll see how plants manage to coordinate themselves. Then we will look at the hormonal system, and we will compare it with the nervous system. That is a very, very important topic. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the key points that you must remember. So let's begin. So our first section, why do we need control and coordination? The answer is simple, but also very powerful. It's all about responding to our environment in order to survive. Every living organism needs to react to the world around it, and this system is exactly how they do it. Think about it for a moment. Every living organism, whether it's a cat chasing a mouse or a simple plant growing towards sunlight, is constantly responding to what's happening around it. And this response is not random. It's very carefully controlled. This entire system makes sure that we make the correct movement for a specific situation. For example, if you touch a hot pan by mistake, you don't stop to think about it, do you? Your hand just pulls away instantly. That is your control and coordination system in action, protecting you from harm. So, how do animals achieve such fast control? Well, that brings us straight to section 2, the nervous system. The best way to think of this is as the body's super fast, high-speed communication network. And the basic building block of this entire network is the neuron, which you also know as the nerve cell. As the definition here says, it is a specialized cell designed for just one purpose: to transmit information. See, information is first picked up by these branch-like parts called dendrites. It then travels down this long part, the axon, as an electrical signal. And finally, it is passed on to the next cell from the axon's end. So how exactly does this signal travel? Let's trace the path of a nerve impulse, step by step. First, a signal is received by the dendritic tips of a neuron. This starts a chemical reaction inside the cell, which creates an electrical impulse. This impulse then travels from the dendrite to the cell body and then speeds all the way along the axon. Now, at the very end of the axon, this electrical impulse causes the release of some special chemicals. These chemicals then cross a very tiny gap. We'll talk about that gap in a moment. And they start a similar electrical impulse in the next neuron. It's a beautiful and incredibly fast relay race.
And that tiny gap that we just mentioned, it has a very important name: a synapse. Please remember this. The synapse is that gap where the electrical signal from one neuron gets converted into a chemical signal just so it can cross the space. This chemical then starts a new electrical signal in the next neuron, so it goes from electrical to chemical and back to electrical. This conversion is absolutely key. Now, sometimes the body needs to react so fast, so incredibly fast, that there is simply no time to think. This is where our reflex action comes in. It is a sudden, automatic action in response to a stimulus, and it happens completely without our conscious control. It's a protective mechanism, like pulling your hand away from a hot flame, where speed is everything. This super fast response follows a very specific pathway called the reflex arc. Let's trace it. It all starts with a stimulus, like heat, which is detected by a receptor, for example, in your skin. The message then travels very quickly along a sensory neuron to the spinal cord. Now, this is the clever part. Instead of the signal going all the way to the brain, the spinal cord itself acts as a relay station. It immediately sends a command back out through a motor neuron. This command goes to an effector, in our example, a muscle in your arm, which then contracts and pulls your hand away. By taking this shortcut and bypassing the brain, the response is almost instantaneous. So reflexes are for emergencies, for survival. But what about all the things we do think about? For all our complex thoughts, our decisions, and our voluntary actions, we need the body's main command center, the human brain. The brain is our main coordinating center, and it has 3 major parts that you must know, each with very specific jobs. Now, please pay close attention to this table, as it is very important for your exams. First, we have the forebrain. This is the main thinking part of your brain. It processes all the sensory information, what you hear, what you see, what you smell, and it controls all your voluntary actions, like picking up a book. Next, we have the cerebellum, which is part of the hindbrain. Its job is to maintain your posture and balance. It also adds precision to your voluntary actions, like when you walk in a straight line or write neatly with a pen. And finally, also in the hindbrain, is the medulla. This part controls all the involuntary actions, the things your body does automatically without you thinking about it, like your blood pressure, salivation, breathing, and even vomiting. Please take a moment to revise these functions.
Okay, so we have covered how animals with nervous systems coordinate. But what about plants? They don't have nerves, they don't have muscles. This brings us to our next interesting section, coordination in plants. How do they manage to respond to their environment without a nervous system?
Well, I'm sure you have seen the touch me not plant, or as we call it, shuimui. Just look at these images. The moment you touch its leaves, they fold up and droop. This is a very fast response, but it has nothing to do with growth. It doesn't happen because of muscles. It happens because the plant cells at the base of each leaf very quickly change the amount of water inside them, which causes them to go limp. This is just one of the clever ways plants can respond. And this actually shows us the two main types of plant movements very clearly. On one side, we have growth-independent movement, just like in the touch-me-not plant. It is a fast response, it is reversible, and it is caused by changes in water pressure in the cells. On the other side, we have growth-dependent movement. This is a much slower response, and it is irreversible because it involves the plant actually growing in a specific direction in response to a stimulus. These directional growth movements are also known as tropic movements.
So, what are these tropic or directional movements? Let's look at the key types. First is phototropism. This is the movement towards light, like when a plant's shoot bends towards a window. Then we have geotropism, which is movement in response to gravity. The roots always grow down and the shoots always grow up. Then there is hydrotropism, which is the movement of roots towards a source of water. And finally, we have chemotropism. This is movement in response to a chemical signal. A great example of this is the growth of the pollen tube towards the ovule during fertilization. Now, this directional growth in plants is not random at all. It's very carefully controlled by chemicals. And this brings us to a whole other system of control. So let's move to our next section, the hormonal system, which uses these slow chemical messengers. You see, plants use these chemical messengers, or hormones, to coordinate their growth. You can think of them as a team, where each one has a different job. First, we have the growth promoters. Auxin helps the cells grow longer and is the hormone responsible for the plant bending towards light. Gibberellins also promote the growth of the stem. And cytokinins promote cell division, and you find a lot of them in fruits and seeds. But then we also have a growth inhibitor, abscisic acid. It does the opposite job. It slows down growth, and it is responsible for the wilting of leaves.
Animals have hormones too. In animals, these are chemical signals that are secreted by special glands called endocrine glands. These glands release the hormones directly into the bloodstream, and the blood acts like a delivery service, carrying these hormones all over the body until they reach their specific target organs.
A perfect example of an animal hormone in action is adrenaline. You might have heard of it as the fight or flight hormone. Imagine you are in a scary or stressful situation. Your adrenal glands will release this hormone directly into your blood. And what does it do? It rapidly increases your heart rate and your breathing rate. This sends more oxygen to your muscles. It also diverts blood away from your digestive system and towards your big skeletal muscles. All of this prepares your body to either face the danger and fight or to run away from it very, very quickly. Now, we come to a very, very important topic, which brings together the two systems we have just discussed. Section 5, nervous versus hormonal control. This is a key comparison for your exams, so please let's focus very carefully here. Okay, let's break down the key differences between these two systems. With nervous control, the information is transmitted as electrical impulses, and they travel along specific nerve fibers. Because of this, the speed is extremely fast, almost instantaneous. However, its reach is very specific. It only affects the cells that are directly connected at the end of the nerve, and the effect is very short-lived. Now, let's compare that to hormonal control. Here, the information is transmitted through chemical hormones that travel in the bloodstream. So naturally, the speed is much slower, but its reach is widespread. It can travel through the blood and reach all the cells of the body, and because of this, its effect is much longer lasting. Please make sure you remember these key differences. We are almost at the end of our revision, so let's quickly go over some final revision points in our last section. These are the most important terms that are the foundation of this chapter. Let's make sure you remember them for your exam. Let's quickly recall them one last time. Take a deep breath, and as I say each word, try to remember its definition. Ready? Neuron, the basic nerve cell. Synapse, the tiny gap between neurons. Reflex arc, the pathway for a fast automatic response. Cerebellum, the part of the brain for posture and balance. Tropism, the directional growth of a plant. Auxin, a plant hormone that promotes growth. Adrenaline, the fight or flight hormone. And finally, endocrine gland, the gland which secretes hormones. Make sure you are comfortable with the definition and the function of each of these. And with that, we have come to the end of our revision session. I wish you all the very best for your exams. Remember, the most important step now is to not just read, but to actively revise. And this is very important. Please practice drawing and labeling the diagrams of the neuron, the reflex arc, and the human brain from your textbook. This practice will make a very big difference. Good luck.